Welcome everyone to Assessing Your Town and how we perform a destination assessment. And I'm going to dig right in. And the first thing I want to say, this is not a sales pitch. This is the process that you can use and that we use to get things moving forward locally or in your area if you represent more than one community. It's a great way to get everyone on the same page, pulling in the same direction. And this workshop is really great for you if you actually want to go out and perform assessments of other communities. You can't perform your own community, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. And it's a great workshop if you want to do an exchange with another community where they might secret shop you, and in exchange you secret shop them or do an assessment. And if you're thinking about having us do one for your community, this is a great primer on what we do, how it works, when you should do it, etc., etc., etc. I hope I can answer all your questions. So first of all, what is a destination assessment? It is a week-long photographic look at your community through the eyes of a first-time visitor. And this can be your community or communities if you represent more than one. In essence, it is us secret shopping you without you giving us a bunch of things. Oh, you need to do this and stay here and go there and eat here. It's us looking at you just like any visitor would. We go through the same process that you would go to when you visit a community for the first time. And when we do these assessments, we always wear multiple hats. So we always look at you from different angles. For instance, is this a place I would want to live or somebody would want to raise a family in or retire to? Is this a place that we would want to invest in or relocate a business? I mean, is this a place that site selectors would gravitate to, or venture capitalists, financial institution, business owners? These are all the hats we wear when we do an assessment. Or is your quality of life so good that we want to live there and we will find a job there, or we will create our own small business in your community? Or we look at you through the eyes of a leisure visitor. Is this a great place to visit and come back to time and time again? And so when we talk about doing these assessments, we wear those hats as a potential business owner or investor. That's economic development. As a potential resident, that's community development. And as a visitor, tourism development. So we wear all of those hats. And then every assessment culminates with an assessment findings and suggestions workshop. I mean, this is the opening slide for the one we did in Raymond, Alberta, or Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And everyone is a little different. Sault Ste. Marie was really looking for, what are we going to do when the U.S. made this announcement that we're going to start doing steel manufacturing and everything in the States rather than even in Canada? So what do they do about that? And that was their focus. So let me explain this whole findings and suggestions things. First of all, the findings are what we saw, what we experienced, what we loved about the area, and some things that we saw that might be challenges where you could use some help. And then we offer for every one of those areas where you could use some help, some suggestions. What could be done locally, relatively low cost for the most part by both the public sector and the private sector to make things even better. And for every one of those, we show photographic examples. Now, the reason we say suggestions is we don't make these recommendations. Remember, it would be presumptuous to come in and tell you, oh, you should do this and this and this when we never talk to you first. So we call these suggestions. And some of them you may already be working on. In that case, you've just been validated. And every assessment starts with just 4 slides. There is always an opening slide where we show something that we loved about the community. And then we tell your audiences what the heck an assessment is, that you've been secret shopped, that there was no interviews, there was no heads up, no input on things to do, places to stay, eat, etc. And then we let the audience know that we wear 3 hats: as a place to live, a place to work or invest in, and as a place to visit. And then we let them know that we have done this in nearly 2,000 communities, across the U.S., across Canada, Western Europe, Scandinavia, and beyond. And then after those few slides, we dig into our experience in your community. What's really, really great about the assessment process is that if you've been a part of the Destination Development Association, you know that we have more than 80 how-to videos on wayfinding, on downtowns, on tourism, on marketing, you name it, but they're fairly general, and the assessment is 100% about you. So all of these things you learned are applied to you specifically. There is, other than those 4 slides, there's nothing in assessment that is fabricated or is boilerplate. It's all, even when we do the assessment findings and suggestions report, other than those 4 slides, it's all brand new. It's an empty slate. And when we do the assessment, we go through all of these things. We go marketing, websites, reviews, what's being said. We go through all of these things. But we concentrate what we saw on site, which is product development. After all, marketing will bring people to you once. Product brings us back over and over again. And so these are the things we cover. But by the way, we never go through a list there. Well, here's what we saw about evening activities. Here's what we saw about downtown. We don't do it that way. But these are the kinds of things that we will cover when we look at a community. But we tend to do it more as a travelogue. Here was our experience. And by the way, an assessment is not a critique. There's never any, oh, you should have done this, or this could have been done better. There's no pointing of fingers. There is no looking back. This is only forward. And here is the most important piece of the entire assessment process. We answer this question: what can we do locally to make our community or communities an even better place people will love to live in, work in, and play in? That is what the assessment is about right there. We have your back. We do not get into, oh, this could have been done better. It's just, what else can you do from this point forward that would make you even better? And the coolest thing at all about an assessment is this is about getting the community pumped up and excited about the things you can do, most of them low cost, that will really make a positive difference in almost no time at all. So that is, in a nutshell, is just a brief, and I'm going to dig in, a brief overview of the assessment. Now, here's why you should have one done. Number one, we typically see things you might overlook. For instance, this is Olympia, Washington, you see here, and we used to live there, work there. As a matter of fact, our office was in that building you see there next to Capitol Lake. There's no way I could assess Olympia because I live there. There's things I just ignore, or I would find everything instantly. So what I did is I brought in a friend of mine, Rhonda Ellisor, who we worked in Huntsville, Texas with. And I said, Rhonda, how would you like to come up here and help me assess Olympia? So in the case of this assessment, I had her drive. I had her do everything. She picked where she was going to stay. She did her research on the internet. And then I rode shotgun. And while I was sitting there in the passenger seat, I kept going, oh, you need to turn left here. And I had to bite my tongue over and over and over because I needed to see it from her perspective as a first-time visitor. You know, we drove by a restaurant and I almost said, this is a great place to eat. But luckily I didn't, because she goes, I probably wouldn't eat there. And it was the curb appeal. I mean, it's so great. This is why you can assess other communities as a first-time visitor, but it's virtually impossible to assess your own. And so whoever visits you and does your assessment needs to see it from fresh eyes. Childhood in gallery right here. She goes, oh, that looks really cool, but she couldn't find a place to park. And I bit my tongue while I was saying, well, you know what? If you turn right and go up 2 blocks, there's a parking lot there. She wouldn't have known that. So those were suggestions that we were able to make. So we can note things that you ignore. We see it from fresh eyes. That's why it's impossible to do your own. Number 2, we can say things you'd like to say, but can't without paying a political price locally. For instance, we're assessing Oskaloosa, Iowa, great town. And we notice that when you drive into town, before you even see welcome to Oskaloosa, you see this sign that says snow ordinance enforced, no on-street parking during snow emergency. That's fine. But then warning, drug and alcohol ordinances strictly enforced. I mean, this is our welcome to Oskaloosa sign. It sounds like they have a drug problem there. And so we made a suggestion. And by the way, you're going to see these little numbers. Every suggestion is numbered. So in this case, we said replace the sign with a welcoming gateway sign. Welcome to beautiful Oskaloosa. Don't scare us away. And so I said, even your local golf course, even if you had a sign like this that said, welcome to Oskaloosa, would give you a first better impression. So we can say these things that might be difficult for you to say. And we even concentrate on local businesses. For instance, here's a little coin and gold shop. And I put, when you have 4 posters, studies show that when you have more than 4 posters in a window, people tend to ignore them all. In this case, there are 20. It just makes the shop look junky. Now, we can say that. It might be hard for you to say it, but we can say those because it's very constructive. And number 3, it provides a third-person look to help you cut through the local politics. That is so important. And after, I got to tell you, we have no side to take. We have no axe to grind. We can say it. We can be totally honest. Whereas you might say, ooh, am I going to hurt somebody's feelings? But after working in 2,000 communities, we've learned a lot, and we can help you guide you through the right decisions and offer new ideas that can really propel your community and your local businesses forward. Number 4, for every challenge we know, we offer a low-cost solution on how it could be remedied. We do not make a comment that is negative if we can't show them how to fix it. So for instance, in this case, when you come into Oskaloosa, there's the sign that you see to the right that lists their auxiliary organization. There's nothing wrong with it. But if we're visiting community, we might want to join you for Kiwanis and lunch. Or we might want to go, where's your local Rotary meeting? And when we're going down a highway, we barely notice this, let alone be able to stop, pull over, and figure out when and where these people meet. But if you notice back behind those trees, right there in this photo, there's a gazebo back there, and we had an idea. And we thought, wow, this would be a great place for visitor information. It's one of the main entrances into the community. And then we showed them an example. This is in Beatty, Nevada, where they took a gazebo, and inside they got maps of the city, their downtown, and of the area. And then wrapped around the base of it are brochures for local restaurants, eateries, a map of a trail system and everything. We thought, man, this would be so great to have right there. And then when it comes to your local organizations, we thought, why don't you put a sign like right where that red arrow is, that would be like this in Gig Harbor, Washington, where it has Rotary and when they meet, Kiwanis, when and where they meet. It'd be perfect. And at that very location was the beginning of a trail system. But here's the challenge. So now we know when your auxiliaries meet, we can get visitor information right there at the gateway to the inn, to the town. And then I thought, wouldn't it be great if you had signs right here that told us, I have no idea where that trail goes, how long it is, whether it's a loop, whether it takes you into town. And so our suggestion was maybe do some signs like this in Alpena, Michigan, where you name your different trails and how long they are, and then show a trail map. And wouldn't it be great if you had those brochures wrapped around that you could actually have your trail maps right there? Because Oskaloosa did have this trail map, but it took us a couple of days to find it. And so we thought, see, by doing this, you're giving them helpful suggestions to help create a better experience for visitors, even for locals, in a welcoming community. So that's what we can do for every single challenge. We'll say, here's how you can fix it, low cost. Number 5, the assessment can include a focus. You may say, Roger, could you concentrate on downtown or on our branding, what it is we want to be known for, product development, marketing? And we can do that. In the case of Westport, Washington, we asked them, what would you like this assessment to accomplish? And here's what they said. Well, can we just be another great beach town, or do we need to narrow our focus? And of course, I said, well, there's dozens of beach towns, so yes, you need to narrow your focus. And so they want to know, well, how do we differentiate ourselves from everyone else? Who should take the lead locally with tourism locally? They didn't know whether it should be Chamber of Commerce, the city. They didn't have a destination marketing organization. Who should take the lead? And then how do we expand our seasonality? There are very high season or very 90 to 120 day season there locally. Should we have a conference, event center? These are questions they asked. And then what are your first impressions as a visitor of Westport? And then what can we do specifically to be even better? And so our whole focus was on answering those questions. Every community gets to do that. In the case of Burlington, Waterford, Wisconsin, 2 communities about 15 minutes apart. They want to work together, which is awesome, but they need what's our points of differentiation? How can we market and work together? And so that was our focus on that assessment. In Carbon County, Utah, we had to look at 5 different communities and how they all blend together, and how do you market a county, and how do you get people to work together? Corner Brook in Newfoundland, it's really the gateway city to the Grossmore National Park, which is absolutely fantastic. And so you want to know, how do we become the hub for that experience? Drumheller, Alberta is already a popular destination in the Canadian Badlands, but they want to extend their season. So how do they do that? Gahanna, Ohio is a bedroom community to Columbus, but they want to be a tourism destination, not just a bedroom community. How can they accomplish that? Lake Geneva in Wisconsin is already a fantastic destination, but they have shoulder seasons in October, November, and then they do have some skiing in the winter, and then they've got kind of mud seasons of April and May. How do they accomplish that? Orangeville, Ontario wanted to really have us look at their downtown. Of course, we looked at the whole community, but we concentrated on their downtown. And then, of course, Sault Ste. Marie, which I already mentioned, how do they diversify their economy? They're a great destination. There is no boilerplate. And so number 6, it shows that you go beyond just your job and see the community as a whole and want to see it grow. So if you're in tourism, yet we're doing a community assessment that looks at schools and neighborhoods and everything, it's the sum of all the parts that makes you a great visitor destination. And by the way, the number one reason people travel is to visit friends and family. So what's cool about the assessment is that you, whether you're in economic development, whether you're in tourism, whether you're downtown, it shows that you care about the whole community, but we may concentrate on your piece, which is fantastic. And it's a great baseline for all of your planning and development efforts. An assessment, here's where you are today from the eyes of the people you're hoping to attract. I always say that there's several steps in community and economic development. Number 1, here's where you are today. That's your assessment. It's your baseline where you start from. And then you decide, where do we want to go? What do we want to be known for? Who are we? And then number 3 is, here's how we get there once you make that decision. And then number 4 is, how do we tell the world? So the assessment is a great baseline for everything that you're trying to do for years to come. And then number 8 is the assessment process was developed from working with more than 400 communities. That's when we really started digging in on how to do this effectively. And we've now done over 2,000. In all of these states, in Alberta, we've done more than 30, Ontario more than 30, Nevada 50, Utah 70. But we've worked in all of these places. And after a while, you saw where I showed you different case histories where I said they did this well in this community, you could apply it to your community. And that's what's really great about this. We have that kind of experience to help you make sure you can offer them suggestions from other communities, what has worked for them. And number 9, it'll get people excited, inspired, and empowered to take on the suggestions. It's a great way to get people working together. You know, I love the fact that I just called the kettle black and people come up and say, we're so pumped. It's because we offered them really great solutions on to tackle their challenges with. And number 10, it brings the community together because we're looking at neighborhoods, parks, downtown attractions, amenities like parking and public restrooms, wayfinding, quality of life. And probably one of the things I love most about the assessments is hearing comments like this, that we got more out of the assessment than when we spent 4 or 5 times the cost for a plan or a study. It is the favorite thing that I've ever done in my career working with communities is assessments. So that is the reasons why. When should you do one? You know what? In the case of Nova Scotia, as a matter of fact, over 10 years, we assess virtually every city and town in the entire province of Nova Scotia. And if you've never been there, you need to go. It is amazing, to say the least. But in their case, they would have us come during the peak season, the summer. But then they would have us come back and do the workshop during the fall. And it costs them a little more to do that. But during the summer, it's hard to get all your merchants that are really busy to come to the assessment findings and suggestions workshop. So we would do it during the peak season. And then we would come back in the fall when people are more available and host the workshops. In Bellingham and the local communities in northwestern Washington, we hosted a findings and suggestion workshop with basically their stakeholders, city, county, tourism, downtown, all of these people. And it went so well that they said, could you come back and do that again for the general public? And we had about 40 people in the first one. When we did the second one, we had more than 200. It was packed and they loved it. In Westport, of course, we did that late March. That was their shoulder season. They're typically a summer destination, but they said, could you come in our shoulder season and tell us what we can do this time of year to bolster our tourism and stretch our seasons? In the case of Wausau, Wisconsin, notice the temperature there? They said, can you come in the winter? We have a ski hill and everything. We're trying to bolster our winter tourism. The challenge I had was I have a DSLR camera and it was minus 13 degrees Fahrenheit. It was so cold that the shutter would freeze up. But, you could do it almost any time of year. So how do you market the assessment? Once you decide, okay, we're going to have an assessment done, even if you exchange it with another community, how you market is by using language like this. We've been secret shopped. What will they say about us? That gets people to turn out. It works. And actually, if you have us do an assessment, we will actually create flyers for you like these that you could put in shop windows in your downtown. First impression of Westport through the eyes of our visitor. We've been secretly shopped. Short, to the point. So we create these and you can put them around town. And then you could even do a second one that's more for email. You can email this out to all your stakeholders and local organizations. And this goes into a little more detail that you would do in an email versus walking by a shop window. So we help you market these. We think it's great to have the press there. Remember, we've got your back. And so this is always about what else can we do to make our community great. And we love having the community there and everything because they're curious. What are these people going to say about us? And it gets them on board and it gets them pumped up. You're going to find more support from assessment than you can by just trying to do press releases and social media. By the way, it's really important if you have an assessment done, no matter who does it, that you tell people when the workshop is going to be, but not when we're going to be there. I went into one town once and everywhere I went, I was walking down the sidewalk with my camera. People come out of the shop and said, oh, you must be the guy doing the assessment. We cleaned up our shop just for you. It would kind of ruin the whole secret shopping experience. And so it's really important. Don't tell them when we're going to be there. We might be there a month earlier in their minds. Usually we do this all in the same week. But what you want to do is invite them to the workshop. Don't tell them when we're going to be there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a true assessment. So here is how we do one of these. First of all, you got to define the geographic area. In the case of Racine County, Wisconsin, they said, okay, can we break this up? And we're actually going to do 2 sets of workshops. So we went out into the western side of the county that you see right there, kind of highlighted, and we looked at that whole area, but they wanted us to really concentrate on the towns of Waterford and the towns of Burlington, which I showed you earlier. These 2 towns are about 15, 20 minutes apart, and they want them to work together. And so we did an assessment of this area for them geographically, and then we did a second assessment that was more of the eastern side of the county along the waterfront, which is where Racine is. And next door is Mount Pleasant, that's getting a brand new multi-billion-dollar Foxconn manufacturing plant. And they said, what do we need to do to get these employees to want to live here and work here rather than commute from Chicago and Milwaukee and other areas? So that's, in their case, that's what they did for geography. In the case of Orangeville, they said, we want you to concentrate on kind of our city, but we always look at the surrounding area, as well, because this is their market area. And they said, could you look at our gateways coming into the town? But they wanted us to concentrate on Broadway, their downtown. So of course we look at the whole area, and then we zoomed in and narrowed our focus onto Broadway, their great downtown, which is really fantastic. And they want to make it better. So the first thing is looking at that geographic area. For metro areas, they say, could you just look at our city center or downtown or specific streets? It might be just, can you look at our city or town or multiple towns if they're fairly close together and smaller? We've done that easily. Sometimes people say, can you look at our whole county? And you might pick areas of focus within the county. We've done assessments for scenic byways or even regions. And then they say, could you assess our state or provincial parks or attractions, you name it. In the case of Carbon County, Utah, it's a pretty big spread out area. And we said, okay, we want to have you concentrate on the recreation area, Price Canyon, and then really take a look at Helper, which, by the way, is a fantastic little up-and-coming town. And then can you look at the city of Price? It's the one incorporated city in the county. And then Wellington, which is the gateway to their major attraction, which is 9 Mile Canyon. We even assessed 9 Mile Canyon. What else can we do to make that visitor experience even better? So this is how they did that. And we were able to do that in 1 week, and I'm going to get into the timelines right now. So here is how a typical assessment goes. We usually start with the pre-trip assessment, planning the trip. Remember, you don't give us too much information. So we have to look, where are we going to stay? What are we going to do while we're there? We're looking at your websites. We're looking at all those different things. So we do that. And we have several people doing this. So they're secret shopping you from that point. But then when we come on site, it usually starts on a Monday. We fly out there, we drive there, whatever it takes. We get there Monday, we kind of set up shop, and we go out and check out the area that evening. Sometimes we come on a Sunday and we start on Monday. This is just a typical assessment, but these can always change. Then on Tuesday, we spend 12 hours. We start early and we stay late getting to know the area. We usually start in the broader area, outside the community, your gateways, coming into the community, kind of an overview of the whole area, getting to know it, and then we zoom in. The next day, we really dig in. If you want us to concentrate on branding or downtown or on our neighborhoods, whatever it is, your area concentration, we really dig in. And during this time, we're taking dozens and dozens of photographs. We're taking notes. And then Wednesday evening, I have to process all the photos. And by the way, I do every one of these. So it's not like, well, Roger's promoting it, but he's not the guy we're going to get. I'm the person who does these with our team. And then, so that Wednesday evening, I process photos. You can tell these are long days. They're like 16-hour days. Then on Thursday, I have to assemble the findings and suggestions workshop. Remember, there is no boilerplate. I'm starting with the very first slide and say, how are we going to do this? How are we going to talk about it? What is the order we put it through? I mean, every community is different. There is no, duplicate this and this and this. And that, by the way, takes about 14 hours to put together, because it's 100% about you. There's nothing off the shelf. And then Friday morning is when we usually do the presentation. We'll do it Friday morning, and then we'll usually meet with your stakeholders afterwards. Then we go home that afternoon, typically, if this is one community or two or three local communities. Then when we head back home, we do an assessment findings and suggestions report. Now, if we're doing an area like Racine, where I showed you we did the east part of the county, that took about 10 days. So we actually did some work over the weekend, and then we presented on Monday. So this is a typical assessment, but we've done some that have lasted 2 weeks. Nova Scotia, we usually went for 2 to 3 weeks and assessed multiple communities. And then we came back in the fall and went on the road to present the findings and suggestions. When we do this, there's always a team. In this case, you can see Jane here with Natalie, our host of this, and they offer extraordinary help. And by the way, it's great. When I do an assessment, I tend to look at it through a man's eyes. I look at the infrastructure, those type of things. But I feel that you really can't do an effective assessment without a woman being there. And the reason is women see things a little differently than men do. That's just a fact of life. And so this way you get really great balance. So there's always 2 of us. In this case, we're doing Sunnyside, Washington, 3 of us with Natalie, our local ham, who has a great time doing these. And that's what it's about. It's finding the things you love about communities and telling you what we love about your community, which makes people feel good. And then here's the things you work on to make it even better. When we do that pre-visit assessment, we do look at your local websites, regional, state, provincial, private websites, public websites. We look at peer review sites, TripAdvisor, Google, Yelp, you name it. We search. What are people saying about you if we just search for your community or your area? We look at Google Images even, social media sites. We look at your schools, your neighborhoods, your downtown, what's local industry like. We will call and request brochures and stuff. And we do all of this is before we even leave. And we're making notes of things to see, attractions, restaurants, things to do. We're making lists of things we got to do when we get there. And then when we come in person, the on-site assessment, we typically take between 200 and 400 photographs. These are the photos we took in Westport. These are all high resolution. We took 408 in Westport. And by the way, you get these. You may say, there's some great photographs we'd like to use in promoting our community. You got them. Usually what I ask is, hey, just give me photo credit. Roger Brooks took this picture, just Roger Brooks. But other than that, no big deal at all. And when we're there, we go through all those lists. You can see our handwritten lists on the right. We go there. Did we see this? Did we see this? This is all from our pre-assessment workshop. And then we're making additional notes. Pedestrian wayfinding, 4-hour parking would be really good. Blade signs, things we need to address. So we do make sure we do all of this. Fishing is always hot at Westport. Local things we found online or when we got there. The marketing assessment, you name it. And then that workshop, it is really great. And I just wanted to show you, this is not an actual slide. This you can see in slide, but notice on the left is the presentation. The reason I'm showing you that is you can see how visual. This is all visual. There's no pie charts. This is not academic. This is really down in and digging in, all visual. So you can see how these presentations are put together. And every single one of the slides is, other than those first 4, is all about Westport in this case. One of the suggestions, we'd like you to develop a Visit Westport website. And we showed them one, Squamish, British Columbia, which I think is fantastic. It's built on a WordPress theme. You can even see my little notes at the bottom. The audience doesn't see that. I see that when I'm doing the presentation. But once again, look at all the slides on the left. We tell them, in this case, we stayed at an Airbnb. And we told them, here's how we picked it and why we picked it. And so this is really great. We said, and by the way, we stocked up on food since we stayed in the Airbnb. It's important to promote that you have a local grocery store like Shopping Cart, because we went there and we loaded up on food and supplies. You can see my notes down there, monetize. And I wanted to get that through, that these are all players in that. And everything that you're seeing, and I'm skipping over a lot of them, of course. But we thought you should create a very best of Westport brochure. You need to promote your anchor tenants specifically. And so we told them to do that. And then we even showed them, this is like Westport Winery. It's fantastic. Notice my note down there said places like this attract the highest income visitors. And of course, their assessment is about tourism. And you can see on the left side the different slides where we're showing the photographs we took. We don't ever show all 400 photographs. We show the key ones that will make the point. But for instance, the dining rivals anything in Seattle. This attracts the highest end visitors. It's the top rated restaurant. It was fantastic. It's always great to point out the great things you have. Another one was Cranberry Road Winery. I mean, even look at the table. Isn't that cool? It's a big chunk of wood. It's just fantastic. And so we're really good about giving accolades. This sign over here says open, basket out, gift shop, worth the walk into the dock. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have walked out there. This is a working fishing town. And so we give them, it's so great to be able to give people accolades that are well-deserved. And we did walk down there. It was worth the walk. And we thought, man, on the way out there, you ought to do interpretive signs that talk about crab traps and fishing. So we're actually educated about this working wharf on our way out to the shop. And then notice what I said, there's no reason why working marine and tourism can't work together. The freezer units, what's in those? The large cases, what are those used for? And so we even help them identify the best of. You know how hard it is to promote your anchor tenants without politics getting in the way? We'll take it from you and tell you how to do it. We showed things like these. These are, I think there's oysters or there's fish in these little, I think these are rearing pens for fish. They have to cover them with nets so that the seagulls don't get in there. But man, we thought, why don't you tell people about this? Because if we can get people to stay in downtown Westport for 2 hours, spending will double. So adding interpretive signs, these are the things that are involved. And once again, look down the left side at all the slides. Everyone is visual. One photo per page, per slide. And so that's what's really great about assessments. They have gazillions of sea lions, and the locals, the fishermen, I think they're the bane of the locals. But for visitors, they think they're the coolest things ever. Wouldn't it be great to do a sign that tells you about the sea lions, why they're there, what they do, where they breed, all of those kinds of things, fascinating to people, and why the locals don't particularly care for them. We even talk about, wouldn't it be great? This is a marine supply store that's really meant for real fishermen. But in there, they do sell clam nets. They sell clam licenses. They sell the rubber boots. This is all part of things they need to leverage, even for visitors. And so these are the kinds of things that we go through. For retails, I saw the shop said closed, and notice they put a little white blank over the hours. I mean, don't just put closed. We don't know when you're going to be open. Invite us back. So these are the kinds of things that we can say that might be hard for you to say. We want them to add benches along these facades. People love sitting while their travel companions are in shopping. And so and then we'll show them examples. For every one of these, show them examples. I'm just skipping through a few slides of how important it is to decorate the facades of your local businesses. And so these are all examples of that. I mean, even restaurants do things like this in Westport. Fantastic. I took that picture in Banff, Alberta. And so, here's for this boat owner, they Gold Rush charters, they give you a website and a phone number, but wouldn't it be great if they had a brochure we could take with us when we're walking the docks? And so these are all the types of things that would be included. Here, it would be great if they've got the docks on the right, all the shops on the left. They should do crosswalks every half block. And you can see on the left, we show examples of the types of crosswalks they could develop. So all in all, they have 3-hour parking, and we think that you should have at least 4-hour parking, which they have, but there's no signs that say 4-hour parking next left. Instead, we just say 3-hour parking, and we don't give them the alternative. And so, in this case, Westport Inn, it's a really great place to stay. But then you look at that portable sign to the right, it looks junky. It looks really cheap. I mean, and it really brings down the value. Those are things sometimes we have to say. What's really interesting is when we're done doing an assessment, I have more business come up and say, how come you didn't pick on my business? I really wanted you to tell me what I should do in my business. And so that's what's really great about it. People see that we're trying to help them be more successful. Even when it comes to branding, I couldn't believe in March how many people were there surfing, particularly the millennials during the week in March, wearing their heavy wetsuits. So he said, why don't you become Surf Town Northwest or Surf City Northwest? And if you appeal to the millennials, you're going to get the boomers. We're going to follow you. And then we even told them this, that if we were leisure visitors, we probably would have stayed in one of these little cabins right there because we could sit out there on our porch watching this vibrant working marina. So those are all the things that are included in an assessment. And you saw in this one, I can't remember, where there's 95 suggestions, and so we go through all of those and we always close with how fantastic it is. The wide open sandy beaches where they let people build fires on the beach with the surf roaring right there. We love the diversity. And when I'm talking about diversity here, it's the landscapes, the wetlands, the marshes, the wide open surf beaches, the bay that's there, the incredible amount of diversity and wildlife and landscapes. They had some great maritime murals throughout downtown, and it's a fantastic place for surfing and for beach watching. And then we close it. Where do we go from here? We want them to create a Destination Westport team of volunteers that would take all of these and sit there and implement them. And then our final slide in this case was, here's to make Westport even more amazing and considerably more successful. This is how you pump people up. Typically the finding suggestions workshop is typically about 2.5 hours, but it's all visual. And people come up by the loads and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. That felt like half an hour. They're glued into it because they're seeing their community through different eyes. For the very first time, they're seeing their own community through our eyes, not their eyes. It's amazing. I've run into people who send me an email and say, Roger, you ruined my life. Everywhere I go now, I start assessing the places we're visiting, which is really fun. Now, if you wanted to see some, if you go to YouTube and type in Roger Brooks Destination Development, it'll take you to our YouTube channel. And if you scroll down, you will see destination assessment workshops. We tell everybody to make sure they film the workshop. And so we've got a whole list of these. Now remember, they're not all professional. Sometimes they'll just put a little camera in the back. Sometimes the audio's not great, but we want you to film these things because you can put them online. And then I'm sure some shop that needed to be there that wasn't there, you could say, at 45 minutes and 30 seconds, Roger talks about your shop, and they could just fast forward it. You can even break your film into pieces. Here's what he said about downtown. Here's what he said about our neighborhoods. Here's what he said about this or this or this. So if you want to see some, there they are. And you can see how long these last. Sometimes if we do an entire county, it might last 3 hours. And I tell you, it does go by fast. It's really great. You can even provide timelines. Here's where he talked about this and this and this, and you can do that easily in YouTube. So it's a great way. That way you've got me on camera saying it's not you repeating what I said. And then afterwards, we'll usually do, if we have time, we'll usually do like a 1-hour roundtable follow-up with your team. This is the Kenora, Ontario team. So we sat down with them and they could ask further questions one-on-one after the workshop. When we get back, we do create a findings and suggestions report. This is the one for Westport. They're usually like 80 to 100 pages. And it's kind of a synopsis of what you've got on film and what we did in person. And by the way, we even give you the physical workshop. So it's a Keynote, Apple Keynote. We also save it as a PowerPoint file so that you could take 15 minutes out of it if you want it and go to a Kiwanis meeting and show, here's what Roger had to say about us for projects they might work on. So this is the assessment findings and suggestions report that typically comes with an assessment. So we put in key slides. We don't put in every slide, but every single suggestion is in there right out. And these are just a few pages from the Westport assessment. So once the assessment is done, we always end with, where do you go from here? In Westport, there was 107 of these. Typically, there's like 80, but Westport wanted a real deep dive. And by the way, you might say 100 things we have to do, but they're little, like less posters in a workshop, in a window. And Westport, I told Westport, other than wayfinding, putting in a wayfinding system, which is a little more expensive, I told them they could implement all 107 things for about $30,000. They were all little things, but it's the sum of all the parts that makes you successful. We wanted them to create the Destination Westport team, and then that team will go through these suggestions and turn many, most, or all of them into implementation assignments. And that's what's really great. This is about making something happen. A lot of the time, the team will break into smaller sub-teams like, okay, we're going to tackle signage, whether it's business signs or whether it's city signs or dilapidated signs. You know, somebody else, a group of people say, oh, we want to work on beautification in the entries. And so you'll create some volunteer teams that will take on some of these. A lot of these could be grouped together. You know, on Westport, there was probably 30 different or 40 different suggestions of little things businesses could do to pull more people in their doors. And that's what's great. In many cases, they've had us come and do a reassessment. We did the incredible Cabot Trail in Nova Scotia, one of the world's 10 great drives. They went through and did all the implementation. They spent nearly 5 years. It was their plan. And they said, after 5 years, they said, would you come back and do it again? And it was fantastic. We show, here's what we saw last time, here's what we saw this time. And we got testimonials from businesses and from communities that saw their retail sales, their services, their overnight stays, even their seasons extend dramatically because of a simple assessment. So with that, here's to your destination assessment, moving your entire community forward.